Hi, I'm Dark Shades, and today's video is your best good enough? Now, I know for many of us we'd like it to be. We work hard, we've educated ourselves, and yet, we're constantly falling short of what we would like to be. Fall short by other people's standards, sometimes because of the expectations we put on ourselves. We fall short even on our own expectations. So we end up thinking, is our best really, really good enough? Now, when you're thinking about is your best good enough, what is your best? What do you deem your best to be? Like for some people, they want to be astronauts, or they might want to be celebrities. Like my grandson, he wants to be a famous footballer. That's not unreasonable, is it? So when we're thinking about being the best, is our best good enough? It really has to do with the standards we set for ourselves. And what standards are they? Now, if we start off with how we were educated, did our education prepare us to be good enough? For a lot of us, it didn't. So many of us, we left the educational system, we left school not knowing our left from our right. Okay, so we knew our we knew our times table. We knew a little bit about history. We knew a little bit about geography. And we knew about English literature, and we knew about English language. But where does that get us today in the real world? Who was there to teach us about relationships? Who's there to teach us about the mechanics of getting a job? It's not just about going in and getting a job and sitting there and saying, I want the job. There's a whole process going on there. Who's there to tell us how to deal with our problems and our anxieties and when things go wrong? Who taught us about that? Who educated us about that? Sometimes if you have caring parents, they will try to educate and they will try to show you things, but they normally try to prevent you from living life. They don't want you to make the same mistakes they made, so they end up telling you their version of what is the best for you, which isn't always the best for you. So you end up making the mistakes because whatever they were telling you isn't working for you. So when your best isn't good enough, what do you do? Like I said, it depends on your own standards. It all depends on what you're working towards. If it's at work and your best isn't good enough, well, that's a bit difficult because they're the ones that control the purse strings and they're the ones that can actually get you out if they feel you're not pulling your weight. So you have to ask yourself, am I pulling my weight? And if I am, that is your best. A lot of us strive too much for perfection, and perfection is a lonely road. Sometimes you can be in a situation where you always want to get things right. You don't want anybody around you to get things wrong because you feel it's a reflection on you. Sometimes you want to do things by yourself because you don't trust anybody else to do it as good as you do. So you have to get things into perspective when you're thinking about, is your best good enough? For a lot of us, it is good enough. And for a lot of us, it falls short of being good. But when you think we used to have the parameters of what our best was. I remember going to church when I was a little girl, and I was told that in order to be a good person, I shouldn't lie, I shouldn't steal. They had the whole of the 10 Commandments, and they had some other traits in there that meant we had to be calm, we had to be compassionate, we had to be loving, we had to be sacrificial, and we had to give, and we had, not give to receive, and if somebody thumped us on the face, we're supposed to turn the other cheek. And we grow up with all these kind of morals and virtues that don't really serve us well because we're not taught how to administer them. And another thing we weren't taught is how to how to communicate with people. When you think of how many different types of people there are in the world, how many different personality types, how many different races, how many different ethnic groups there are, and you're meant to be in this world communicating with people and being successful and being the best you can be, and yet you don't know how to effectively communicate to all these people who are important to you so that they can understand what you're saying. Even people who speak your language, sometimes you have difficulty in explaining what you mean. And sometimes they get in a huff, sometimes you get in a huff because they haven't understood what you're saying and you haven't heard what they're saying. And so it's a little tough world out there. But the most important thing is to know your personal standards. Not anybody else. Don't measure them by anybody else's. Your personal standards. You meet your personal standards. Make sure they're realistic standards. It's not like you're going to be an astronaut in 6 weeks kind of thing. Make sure your standards are good enough for you. And you know what kind of future you want. And for a lot of people, being the best they can possibly be means bringing someone else into the equation. Some people resist that because they feel that bringing somebody into the equation is going to take something away from them. And so they're a bit reluctant in case everything goes kaput if they bring somebody in. But when you think that love and work, or love and money, that combination is what most people strive for. And when I mean love, I don't mean the old-fashioned kind of love, because that wasn't even love. People got married. They didn't even have to like their wives. They got married so they could have babies and so that somebody was in the house. Somebody was in the house to clean the house or to make house anyway, to look after it and do all the washing and the cooking and the cleaning. The man didn't necessarily have to like the woman didn't necessarily have to like the man, and it didn't matter. They would do their conjugal rights and that was it. I was watching Betty Davis the other day and she met this guy. He was a rich person, but her brother was a gambler and he'd sold the house. Well, he'd put the house in debt. So she went over to this guy. She was very, very beautiful. And she went to this rich man and she just stood in her office and she fluttered her eyelashes. And he didn't even care that she didn't love him. He just wanted to look after her. And, you know, they had sex and they had a baby, but there was no emotion, nothing. And that's how it used to be. So now we make life harder today because we have all these expectations from the people we have relationships with. We expect them to love us. We expect them to be romantic. We expect them to take us out on dates. We expect them to all these little things. We expect them to fulfill our needs, even our unmet needs, even the needs they don't know about. Half of the needs they don't even know about, and we don't communicate it to them. And when they ask us, we're like, oh, there's nothing wrong, and we expect them to know what we are thinking. It doesn't work like that. You need to communicate effectively. And if you don't know how, you need to learn how. It's very important. And also with work, it's not necessarily going to fulfill what you want it to, unless, of course, you run your own business. But if you're working for somebody else, you're not necessarily going to get that work fulfillment. You're not necessarily going to get that promotion. Does that mean that you're not going to be the best you can possibly be? Of course not. Like I said, you set the standards. You know what your best is, and you strive towards getting that best. And then that's all I've got to say, really.